So this particular verse, Metancha sabha lokasa mingmana sambhavaye aparimanang, with goodwill for the entire cosmos, cultivated with a limitless heart. That means it's not bound by limitations. And this is, if we really develop our meditation, and particular in states of metta, this is possible. Staying with some of the great monks who you've been blessed to come and visit here. You're going to be having soon, I believe, Lumpo Dan from Thailand, a very, 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 very respected, famous teacher. Very blessed to have him, and great honour, great merits to the centre. Also, Lumpo Plim in the early days when he was very strong, he would come out here. So a lot of you might not remember that. So it's only on this special occasion I'm putting the picture out just to say farewell to him, because all around Thailand they're putting the picture out for him, because he's one of the great monks of our era of forest tradition. So all the forest monks recognise that. So they show some kind of respect. I being myself from the Thai Sangha. And it's meritorious to do that. So it's not like trying to say he's the best teacher. It's more because it's the occasion for doing that as Sangha, just showing respect and honour. Like, for example, yourselves, when a family member passes away, then you put their picture up. And the same two monks do that. If they know he's a very well-known monk, well-practiced, excellent teacher, did a lot of service. And one of his themes was always this particular verse, Metancha sabha lokasa mingmana sambhavaye aparimanang. He would constantly speak of this verse, and constantly, in all his time, private conversations with him, he would always say all his private time was just spreading metta. When in deep meditation, all his aspirations was to just spread metta in all four directions for peace and happiness. And his metta was so powerful that it attracted all people from all around Thailand to come to his monastery. And this is where we see when the mind develops Dhamma practice in a certain particular aspect of Dhamma, it generates this powerful field of energy and attracts people. I know another very famous teacher, he does another different style of practice. He develops another Brahma Vihara to its highest, and that is the Upekkha Dhamma. And because of that, he doesn't attract people. And people don't know who he is at all. And only the monks who know him well can pick up on that vibe, because it's much more refined level. People tend to think indifferent. Equanimity is a quality of indifference. But it's one of the very highest dharmas. And so as we ascend up through the Brahma Viharas, what we will realize in our metta practice, going into metta, then karuna, which is compassion, and from compassion to mudita, which is the joy of others, which means the total destruction of any hatred or jealousy in the mind. So that is a powerful achievement. And so I was just showing these states are eradicating some very heavy defilements in the mind, and when their absence once those three factors are fulfilled, then it's naturally it just overflows with upekkha. But then usually the practitioner will decide which one to focus more on, and this teacher, he focused on that. You could feel that presence. It just gravitated. It's like a magnet. You just gravitated to him. Even the fact I can't stop thinking of him. Sometimes at night before I go to sleep, I just hold the picture and I look at it, and it brings me so much joy. Or if I have some difficulty. And this is another thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that not saying, but some of the great monks of our generation and also previous times who have reached nibbana, who have attained the utter destruction of all kilesas, and one thinks, they are no longer with us, they're no longer, and we can't be witness of them. But he shared a very important teaching when his teacher passed away, who was a very famous monk, very blessed monk, very not so well known as well, but famous for his psychic powers. And after his funeral, he lost a little gift that his teacher gave him, a little gift to remember him. and he was very sad. He remembered himself as a young monk. He's still developing his practice, very much developing his metta practice. He said it was very sad. Then out of nowhere, he was just in his kutin, and suddenly something fell on him, and it was like a crystal relic, and he didn't know where it came from. It spooked him totally. He still to this day doesn't know how that appeared. And then he thought, So sometimes we know, we can say, oh, that's a silly story, Ajahn. I don't know. Maybe it just fell off from their higher shelf and he didn't recognise it's there. But I don't think he would have missed that. But there has been recordings with the monks, some of these great masters who are performing some kind of feat or miracle, and also showing that they're in Nibbana. It's not that they can't see us. There is some type of still connection, because Nibbana is not meaning everything is shut off. It means, from my understanding, the consciousness is totally purified. It's all-knowing. The consciousness is there. It's another level of consciousness. And how can we understand that? The Lord Buddha made that very clear, that consciousness needs an object. For example, now, for you to listen to my voice, what is arising is the ear consciousness. If you don't have a good ear, you can't hear the sound and you won't be able to hear what is being said. But because you have a healthy ear and there is a sound and language you understand and consciousness arising, then it goes into the mind and it can recognize it. And this is a very strange way to consider it, but this is how the Lord Buddha dissected ourselves as we are as a human being, in reality, what is our experience. So to look at this dissecting of these different consciousness that arises, there are 5, the Lord Buddha says. The main ones is, first is on the level of the eye. The eye sees a form and consciousness arises at the eye level. And then again on the ear, some sound arises there, so it arises in the ear consciousness. So in the brain itself, it's filed in different categories and areas that it understands it. And then on the tongue level, on taste, and then on the nose level, on the odors and fragrance and smells and so forth, it registers there. And finally, also on the tactile sensation of the body. And these ones are the main ones that we come into understanding the world around us. But the other one, which is the internal one, is the mind, where we think ideas and thoughts, and they arise on the level of the mind. Mind has its own individual one for only aspects that such thoughts and emotions purely on that level. So for example, if we're sleeping and we have no external contact, we are just sleeping and thinking these objects, then it's proving the point that it's very true, that they have their own individual yatana, as the Lord Buddha says. So when we dream at night, we are dreaming and we're not using our sense faculties. They've all shut down because we're in deep sleep, but we are using it on that level of mano, on the level of the mind only. So then this is a scientific way to prove the point, what I'm trying to say, that what Lord Buddha is saying. Even though science can't really find it, they don't know how to really unravel the brain. They're still learning about the brain and how it works and things like that. There's so much they still don't understand. And so with that, why I wanted to talk about that is because this is directly related why we have so much difficulties in developing the Brahma Viharas. And it's because of our daily experience are not being filtered. So the Lord Buddha giving us this way of looking at things helps us filter our experience. So the first way we will look at is we'll play number 3 now. So if we just close our eyes, and I'll give you an example of that. So there we have an example of it's just purely on the level of the ear. You cannot see it, You cannot taste it, you cannot smell it. It's a pure just sound, and sound's a very good way also to prove that point. So when we experience that sound, then we have a feeling with that sound. And this is what the Lord Buddha says, this is how we learn to experience and make choices. And this is where we arrive at another very important Dharmic truth. The Lord Buddha says that everything is driven by desire. So when we even experience a sound, it has, straight away, we can recognize it's creating some desire in the mind. And the Lord Buddha divided into, in the first Dhamma Chakkabhavana Sutta, Bhava Dhamma, Vibhava Dhamma, and the tanha of desire, sensual desire, the desire of Bhava Dhamma, which is becoming, and the desire to not to become. So in a way we can understand what does this mean, these three Pali terms that the Lord Buddha divided simply to make it very simple for us to understand desire. And this way we can see the first one is just purely where desire is neither too strong or neither too weak. It's just some basic, just feeling, enjoying life or whatever. It's very harmless kind of desire. It's just whatever form, but still there's a kind of association that I enjoy this and I'm going to enjoy this and do that. Wherefore, and this is just explaining it simply, not saying that's complete explanation of tanha, but just looking at like that in the perspective of the free. Then we can see the other one, the desire of it becoming, is when we establish an ego and say, I'm important, I exist, I don't want to die, I don't want to suffer, where we selfishly obsessive about our feelings to the point where we're not concerned about others at all, and this is where we get obsessed, but I need these things, and then maybe we are obsessed by our self needs. There's so much self importance, and of course I'm not saying denying that we're not important, but sometimes if we look at it carefully, sometimes it's outright just selfishness, and this is what the Lord Buddha is saying, that this one of becoming is developing this outright now selfishness, which is very unprofitable. It doesn't really help us in any way, and it doesn't support the community and so forth. So with that, we can see it in that perspective. Again, it's not a complete explanation, but I'm just trying to put it in some context here. And then another one where we can see is the other aspect of vibhavatana, is not to become. And this we can see is a growing thing in society, where a lot of people committing suicide or taking intoxicants to just forget about all their problems, to basically be destructive nature. And that shows because they can't handle, or it's because they can't accept the stress or pressure, or can't accept. Another example of that is, like, for example, recently I saw a situation where a young couple, and they were going to start to date. It was on a movie, because I was observing some movies for the teens group. And the lady said, you won't like me. I've got a giant birthmark on my face. And because they didn't know who they were, and they were excited to meet each other. And he says, I love you anyway, if you've got a birthmark or not. And for all that period until she was going to meet her beloved loved one and maybe marry or whatever, she had this strong desire to just destroy herself or get rid of that, or just totally don't see him, because she was afraid of being rejected. And this is what I mean by that point. And that's just one simple example. We can use it also for men as well, not just women. So for example, if there's men competing in a sport and one knows he's going to lose, he might deliberately not go to that competition because he knows he can't accept he's not good enough to win, and he can't accept failure or losing that competition. So again, we're seeing this. These are realities that we are seeing, the Lord Buddha says. These are realities that we can look at and see how desire manifests in these three ways, and how they take hold of us, and also generate much unwholesome states of mind. So with that, in understanding that, when we see the first aspect of tanha in itself, sensual desire, then, or desire for things, then we try to also look at these yatanas. For example, in that situation, straight away, we don't see it in sensual way. We see it as negativity. I don't want that. So we can identify that noise, that traffic is actually generating vibhava tanha. Why are you, Ajahn, playing traffic? I've come to a meditation. Why are you torturing us? Why are you doing that? Why are you putting more stress? I can go out. I don't want to go out in the street, But what we can see when we recognize that, we can recognize that as what I want to bring up, which is very rarely talked to lay people. It's more a monk terminology, but I think also sometimes lay people can get the point. What the Lord Buddha called a ramana, objects of the mind. So if we are very peaceful in our meditation and that object of traffic, we can see it as an object of just sound, noise. And then we can also see we're going through our library and picking out and saying, I don't like that. That's stressful. Yeah? And that's correct. Okay, we can say, sure, there's a bit of stress. But we make that choice to flow through that desire of vibhava tanha. And that's what I was trying to point at, that how powerful tanha, it works so deeply in making us make these choices where we don't have any basis of meditation or any basis of calm in this world of chaos. So now in Buddhism is growing in the terms of spirituality because of the great amounts of stress and anxiety in the world. People want to learn how to make their minds peaceful, and I think that is fantastic. And it's a great, and you can almost say how the world is so fast, so stressful. It's just perfect conditions to get Dharma going. It's in a way, it's a blessing in a disguise. So we can say, oh, I don't like the world the way it is, all this. But actually, as we understand also in the first sutta of the Lord Buddha, that it's because of suffering that we can transform that suffering. It's because there is this thing called suffering that Dharma can arise. If there is no suffering, then what's the point of Dharma? We can look at it very deeply like that. What is the point of coming to the center, doing this and that? Because we have some aspect of stress, anxiety, suffering, uneasiness, or confusion, and we want clarity. For example, if we're very peaceful, able to enter jhana, super peaceful, why would we bother coming to the hall? We'd be at our home, meditating, being blissful out. But because we're not at that level of that practice, we still need input, Dharma, to keep us on track so we can guide ourselves and develop our Dharma practice. So with that understanding, now we will go to a second object, which is, we'll play now number 4. So again, close our eyes. Okay, then we can see, oh, very different, Ajahn. First it was the traffic sound, really annoying. This one, quite nice, Ajahn. Hope the next one's going to be better. So then we can see straight away, in this kind of situation, when we isolate the yatana bases, which I was saying before, the ear consciousness, and focus on that, we can see, if we're given some examples, we can see what's going on. We can see Dharma. We can see, this is very true what the Lord Buddha says. Oh, now I'm going that way. My mind's inclined now to more, let's say, not so sensual, Ajahn, a bit more neutral. Yeah, very relaxing, see sounds, very nice, very conducive for meditation. Maybe we'll use that for the guided meditation, Ajahn, so forth. We can think like that. Where for the traffic, oh no, terrible. It's just, horrendous. So what we should be recognizing is not this dialogue that we're creating around that object, which is normally what we do, and that's not wrong, but as meditators, Dharma practitioners, we're trying to reduce that and go a little bit deeper so we can access wisdom. Because wisdom is not mental proliferation, it's not a dialogue, it is an actual recognition of Dharma arising in the mind. So to put it bluntly, that's why we need a little bit of suffering for wisdom to arise. That's why I played the first one, which is not very nice, and then I play a nice one. And now we'll go into the third one to prove the point even a bit more further. And let's play number 6. Okay, Ajahn. Are you taking us out, Ajahn? You're taking us to a nightclub. Are you hinting you want to go to a nightclub or something? Again, we can observe very different, isn't it? These three, extremely different, what arises in the mind. One, and of course we can see, how smart this technology is, or people creating music. They really know how to make you feel like dancing. You know, I even myself, I feel like dancing, because it's quite funky. But I have to wait till I'm in my room and and have some reason. Like, I'm not dancing, I'm sweeping, I'm doing So we can see how addictive some of these sounds, how they create feelings that arise. So again, this one is a classic one of creating this feeling of bhava, of tanha, this sensual desire, sensual enjoyment, pleasure, fun, so forth. Wherefore, as I was saying before, bhava tanha, that's a bit different. It's when it's really we're identifying ourselves as an individual, as a subjective reality, not objective. It's my things, this, that, I want this, I want that. Creating that kind of strong attachment to something. So this is perpetuating more suffering and more attachment, as the Lord Buddha says, and our long journey in samsara vata, in this wheel of existence, of life after life. So when we see this experience, which is more of these three, we can see one is lacking. I haven't given you an example for becoming, which is very hard based on ego and attachment. But let's say, for example, that nice pleasant ocean sea sounds, yeah? And let's say you can't meditate without it. You have to have this sea sound. That is an attachment. That is what I mean by bhava tanha. I can't meditate without the sound of the ocean. Let's say you at home, you need the crystals, you need your purple cloth on, you need the incense burning, you need the right smell, the right environment, and everything's got to be ergonomically right so you can meditate. This is what I mean, is that we just get so extreme with controlling our environment. In a way, we're creating, I'm not saying it's wrong, it might be helpful, but sometimes we have to identify, am I developing some form of strong desire? Like the Lord Buddha says, that is going to bring perpetuate some kind of more stress. So that's why in Theravada tradition and forest tradition, we keep it very simple, plain, no colours, minimal. So then we can go into our mind and not be lost with creating too much environment, just keeping it a suitable, quiet, peaceful environment to meditate. So then we can actually then observe these three different tanhas as they arise. And sometimes they arise from memories and so forth. And so with understanding on this level of these three tanhas, once we have more peace in the mind and are able to attain the state of peace and calmness, then we go on another level where we can go not bothered by them, and that's what meditation is about. When the tanha of any form has been totally put aside, so we're not worried about ourselves, not egocentric, worried about ourselves, not having any strong aversion as we meditate, and no strong desires arising to do this, do that, whatever, but we're happy and content and we can sit peacefully. And this is what the Lord Buddha says is the entry point for developing the four Brahma Viharas. For when we have that level, then we can develop the four Brahma Viharas. And the first one is metta. And a lot of us have difficulty understanding that. So now we'll play some clip to show what it feels like when we're developing metta. We'll play number one. With no sound, please. With no sound, just silent. So again, we're going to split the consciousnesses purely on a visual level, just silent. So again, we just observe it on a visual level because we just observed it on a sound. So it goes deep into our visual consciousness. Okay, wonderful. So what we can see there automatically is we might feel a bit intimidated, a bit worried. It might harm us. It doesn't look so friendly. So it brings up no metta in that situation. We normally, and our response will be that most 10 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 will be no metta. But for a Dhamma practitioner, the first thing he'll say, oh great, what a great opportunity. This dog is stressful. This dog is anxiety. This is the perfect opportunity to develop metta. I have a negative thing. And this is what I'm talking about, this negative gearing in Dharma practice, which the Lord Buddha, sadly, a lot of people don't understand. There's a lot of that, such as suffering. Oh, great, there's suffering. Let me use this. There's this feeling, I don't like this dog. Great, let me explore that. I'll give you an example of that. When I was going in remote places in Thailand, Tudong, there's a lot of wild dogs in remote areas and also in villages because of the lack of, poverty and so forth, and there's no control of their procreation of the animals. And I was attacked by a whole bunch of dogs. They came running at me, and I only had my umbrella, which to protect me from rain. I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? And I straight away thought of my teachers and always trying to develop metta as much as possible. And then I straight away thought, oh, maybe I can just teach them a lesson. So at just the last moment, as they're about to bite me, I just stuck out my umbrella and pointed it at them. They went, ah! And I laughed at them. Ha ha, got ya! Like a practical joke. You didn't think I was going to do that, did you? And straight away the feeling was no harm. There's no harm in a situation. Even I was a bit scared, but I looked at my mind, it says, no, there's no anger, there's no hate. It's purely perfect. And also I had a bit of fun. So that's when we can really explore our Dhamma practice in a stressful situation and create metta. So I'm just giving that example there. So in another situation with metta, now we will look at it, witnessing it in others, not seeing it as a direct thing, but witnessing it in others. And this will play number 11 with the audio and visual, okay? So this is a clipping from, see if you can guess which movie it's from, okay?
Right, Clark? 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 Clark, come out of there.
Leave me alone.
Clark, I have called your mother. Clark! I'm here. Clark, honey, it's Mom. Will you open the door?
What's wrong with him anyway?
He's such a freak. Crybaby.
His parents won't even let him play with other kids. I know, what a weirdo.
Sweetie, how can I help you if you won't let me in?
The world's too big, Mom.
Then make it small. Just, focus on my voice. Pretend it's an island out in the ocean. Can you see it?
I see it.
Then swim towards it, honey.
What's wrong with me, Mom?
So wonderful. So that's a different experience where it's not a direct relationship to us, where it's affecting us. Like the other visual is just silent purely on the visual level, which I was again explaining to us on a level of eye consciousness, and we're just seeing that, and then we have an opportunity to alter that or rise in consciousness in that point. Same as with the sound, the stressful traffic, and so forth. So when we have that ability and that skill in our meditation with dealing with the daily arising of things, and we can see more as an object that has arisen in the mind, which is correct, it's the correct way of seeing. This is, by doing that, we are no longer working on a mental proliferation level, we're actually realizing Dharma. We're actually slowly getting closer to Nibbana. When we have that, we see, oh, this is arisen in mind. Anger, hatred, this is what I mean, the term. And this little test is a very good way to see that in a very artificial environment, so to speak. So with something like this, it is more us witnessing a scenario to help us develop tools and skills. And that's what movies are very good like that. Sometimes they have some very good scenes, and we think, oh, I remember that. If it comes a situation like that, I'll maybe respond in the same way. So a lot of us could identify maybe with the child or the mother and see, oh, you know, I feel like that. I would really feel if I was a mother, I would try to do that to help the child. So as the Lord Buddha says, even as a mother protects her only child, thus with a boundless heart should develop love for all beings. So, and that's another one. It's beautiful. It just shows that metta, the basis of metta. So in a way, that's very correct. In that Pali verse there, we can see in that scene. And that generates an understanding for us, because we witness it and saying, oh, it's wonderful. So if we ever see in a situation in the future, and then we will do it in reality, then the effective power will be twofold, because we're no longer witnessing, but we're actually in a scenario where we're doing that, and we'll get a lot of happiness because we're developing our Dhamma practice directly in a situation. So that's a way where we can use metta, not just in meditation, but to use it skillfully in our daily lives. So it's a twofold thing. These Brahma Viharas are one on a level of really useful in our meditation, but also very useful in our daily lives. And so if our meditation is not really good in metta, but in our daily lives we really are expressing it, finding situations, being skillful, then when we go to meditate, then it'll naturally come, because we've promoted it enough. And this goes very correct with another Pali saying, asevana chapalam pandidancha sevana, which is if we associate with unwise people, unwise situation or foolish things, then we get polluted. And when we are polluted, then there's no chance for us to promote any positive goodness. For example, at Keysborough, there was a young girl came up, and she had a lot of thoughts of harming. And she said to me at the end, I feel a lot of negative thoughts of harming. She was only 10 or 11 or 12. And I said to her, who has harmed you? Who has been mean to you? Was my first response. And she started almost crying. She says, you got to understand they don't know what they're doing. When you understand that, maybe you can try to forgive them and don't do what they do. And she understood. So sometimes, we have to look like that. Why are we harming? Is because maybe people have harmed us and their unskillfulness has rubbed on us. And this again, asevana chapalam pandinancha. Then we realize, I don't want to associate with such people. Well, I want to associate with people that's promoting non-harm, peace, and spiritual happiness for all. So when we see it like that, then we can really understand. And now we'll go to the next clip where we'll look into the next one, which is a natural knock-on effect. You could say like a domino effect. Once you understand metta, naturally the next thing that arises is karuna, compassion. So with that we will look at the first aspect of karuna, just number 2, and we're just again in silence. So wonderful. We can see in that scene a very famous daughter of some well-known personality in America grieving for her lost father. And straight away we can acknowledge that grief. We know it's not ours, but we can acknowledge, yeah, I've experienced that as well. We share the same life. If someone close to me dies, I feel the same way. So we automatically, naturally have this sadness or compassion. So we can see some types of negative situations are quite healthy, quite positive. We can use it in a positive way to have feelings for other people because other people are suffering, and we can give our thoughts of compassion towards them. But not even doing anything, but just the thought of it is already beneficial for oneself and for them. So then now we'll look at another aspect of Karuna, number 9, with audios as well.
Go for the overpass.
Go for the overpass! Take cover! Take cover! Over there! Just follow them! Take cover!
She's stuck! Hey, still in the car! Let's go! Head to the car!
I'll get him. I'll get him.
No, no. Get your mom to the overpass.
Okay, so that's an excellent one where we can, again, like the metta scene with the mother, this one with the father, doing this act of self-sacrifice, and we can witness that is really what we can say in a nutshell is a powerful form of compassion, is when we make a self-sacrifice for the benefit of others. And that quality, that sacrifice, is sometimes difficult to do, and it's usually we do it most with people that we love and care for, and because we know they would do the same for us. So that's a very nice, noble gesture, and it's a very special quality that we have as human beings, and regardless if we're practicing Dhamma or not. There's that quality there. But, you know, we should not just leave it there, that karuna is something that we should cultivate, because the reason we need to cultivate it, because there are those people we feel no compassion for. And this is what the Lord Buddha says, they behave like that because of their ignorance. And those people that are very evil and very hard to generate compassion for, we should learn to consider that and develop that. And that would be a very powerful experience to transform also our own negativity, and also develop maturity, so then that we can see, oh, they're just behaving that because of ignorance. We can have understanding, because this is what compassion has, the element of understanding. We understand the situation and we understand the way they are. We can act in a way that's beneficial. And so with understanding that, we can look now at another lofty Brahma Vihara, and that is when we have metta and compassion, there is another one which is very beautiful, and that's mudita, which is not very taxing, but it's very challenging because it's looking deeply at jealousy and hate, and that others people's success. And the Lord Buddha says that is also not very helpful. And that usually we can look closely is going to this form of bhava tanha, the controlling the attachment to the self. They're winning, they're getting this and that. And we're really, to generate jealousy, we need to have a strong sense of self. And that's what we can look at. So it's wonderful when we can use these two main paragrams, the 3 forms of tanha and the 4 Brahma Viharas. We can see how they are working together and how they can help to eradicate one another. So it's wonderful to see that. And actually all the Dhammas that the Lord Buddha taught actually do that. They all interact. They all can give some responsive, positive effect if we have skill and understand them thoroughly in their terms of understanding. So with understanding this quality of mudita, we will now, on the level of just purely visuals. So if you can play the mudita, which is the, let me see, I'm a bit lost track. Forgive me there for a second. You've got it in the pictures? Yeah. That's not where it is. So this is just recently from what we call working bee at Newbury Monastery, which was sent to me to my phone, and I just straight away the reaction was mudita, just joy, just seeing people doing good, being mindful, making merit, and doing something very wholesome and supportive, really helping a new monastery so that they have a bit of more manpower on that day to get some important things done in the summertime, such as wood stacking and so forth. It's wonderful to see the kids doing it together harmoniously. And also, with that, in the evening, they had a session with the monks. And that's lovely, the way to end it, doing some wholesome activity, and then some of the monks at Newbury teaching Dhamma. So that's wonderful. So that's all, yeah. So again, something like that we can easily respond to in a level of joy. You can say, oh, that's wonderful, really positive. So we should, when we do see those things that give us that, we should acknowledge that and spend a little time in considering that. And that helps to also uplift the mind as well. Okay, we can switch that off. And now finally, with passing on through from mudita, going to upekkha, and with upekkha is the most hardest Dhamma to develop, because it's meaning non-reaction, where there is a normal reaction, and we react, and we could be right. We have a right to react in a certain way, and we have right, but also, if it is okay to react in a certain way, we should also keep a certain percentage of the mind a little bit equanimous and saying, well, it's right, but it's also, let's be a bit neutral as well. Let's not be 100% in that way. So without further, we will now play number 7 just in silent mode. Wonderful. So there we see someone dying in hospital. It may be a relative, maybe not. Maybe we're just passing by in a hospital and we see that. Again, it creates this feeling of sadness and quite, look, I really don't want to, it's upsetting. We don't really want to view such things. And a lot of people, that's very true. A lot of people can't deal with it, that sadness and that grief and all that, especially if it's not their relative. It's quite unsightly. But sometimes we have to sometimes pull our mind to accept the reality of life, that we're all going to grow old and die. And sometimes it's not wrong to just spend a bit of time just considering that, and then allow ourselves to experience a bit of neutrality in the mind, and even though it's difficult. So again, that's why it's so good when we only have one sense base. Let's say it's only a visual sound, then it's much more easy to work with, because when it's the sound, the sight, it's very overwhelming. And so that's why the Lord Buddha says, if it's possible, if we can sometimes do a test to just break them up and just experience it in one sense base, just as a visual, then we can see it's a whole different experience than if we were to play the sound with it as well. And so in another example of upekkha is one where we will witness people having to be in that situation to develop upekkha. And they might not be perfecting it, but you can see how difficult it is. And this is a good, excellent situation, showing someone trying to develop it, and so difficult. And this is what we can all acknowledge ourselves. Yeah, it's very difficult in very stressful situations. So we can play number 10. Yeah, with audio. It's the movie clip. Wonderful, wonderful. So it's very hard to remain equanimous, and this is what is sadly understood in Buddhism for example, when the Lord Buddha passed away, before his parinibbana, many monks were crying and grieving for the Lord Buddha. And his last words was, don't be heedful, monks. All things of nature arise and to pass away. All conditioned phenomena is not stable. Do not be heedful in your practice. So he's just showing that it's natural to have those emotions. It's like saying, "Oh, Ajahn, you're saying you're so cold, you don't care," you know. But that's where a lot of people don't understand, monks or high level, when there's no emotion, they think they don't care. But they're very much on another level where they understand, they've come to accept it. They're not harming, but they're not generating a sense of warmth that most people attach to, this kind of warmth, and they think that's good. I'm not saying it's not. But when we are developing our Dhamma practice, we see that attachment is natural, but we also should develop some equanimity to cope with it. And then you can see that he's trying to hold back the tears. It's a natural thing, just so he doesn't just have a nervous breakdown. So you can see it's a natural mechanism in us when we're under really stressful situations. We do the mind inclines to upekkha. That's why we're trying to hold back the tears or this or that and grieving. Because we are actually, if we don't know or not, are actually intuitively trying to develop the four Brahma Viharas. But it's like we're in a dark room and we can't find where's metta, where's karuna. We're just, because we're lost in the onslaught of the three tanhas that are impinging on us and influencing our behavior and allowing us no space for some peace and clarity. So the only reason why I have so much information because I've had an intense week preparing for 3 talks in a very short time. I did a 1-day retreat, very experimental, audio, visual, lots of at Keysborough, and then in the evening I did the teens group, and then here as well. Then all different themes. So sometimes under stress, some good Dhamma comes out. So I hope you enjoyed today's Dhamma talk, and may you always develop your Dhamma practice and develop more creativity in it, because that is the secret, I believe, creativity in the Dhamma practice on the Modana. Sadhu, sadhu.
Bhante, we have 2 questions from our online audience. Yep. The first question from Li Pham is, how do prayers work? Okay, prayers work. One aspect of prayers is that we can see the Lord Buddha did explain that there are these jaritas, these characters that are inclined to certain way of behaviour, and one of them is the faith jaritan. And you can see that classically. I was just speaking to a relative, and through a friend, his mother was a devout Catholic. She was a devout Catholic, and she would bring her young son, who was my relative's friend, play friend, and he would tell me, I said, how's your best mate? He says, oh, well, I don't like going there anymore because she makes us do rosary. Makes us do the rosary and doing all the Catholic prayers and so forth. She has a little shrine room, she has Madonna and all that. And she's really dedicated to it. She does it, and she gets a lot of happiness from it. And that's where we take on the basis of religion on this. I don't want to be rude and offend other religions. I don't mean it that way. But if we look at it deeply in a scientific way, there's no basis for that, because it's a bit like blind faith. We believe that the Almighty God will take away all our suffering and stuff like that. Hail Mary will help purify me. And sure, because of that trust in that being, or that very pure being, I don't doubt that Mother Mary or Jesus was a very beautiful human being, very spiritual minded. There's even reports he went to India, he learned meditation, so forth, and maybe his mother was similar, like the Lord Buddha's mother, very pure lady, nice lady, and that might be powerful to acknowledge that. But when you take it on this very superhero, really powerful Madonna religious icon, that character to easily access that chanting and be really positive with it. Let's say if you're more the skeptical kind of character, you say, "Oh, I don't have any feelings, don't have any interest." You can't change that, and you can't change that. And the Lord Buddha says these 2 pathways into Dhamma. This is a faith pathway and a Dhamma pathway. So someone with faith, it easily develops confidence and trust very quickly, and then will follow that through. Where for the other side will be a bit more skeptical, slow to gain that trust, and slowly through his own experience or her experience get more confidence. And so with the other one, you would say, oh, they wouldn't do chanting because they don't trust and things like that. It's not very true. For example, if they're studying the scriptures and analysing it, they will, let's say, Karuna Metta, like all of you chanting that, you actually feel this is very beautiful verses. I want to chant that because I really have a lot of belief in that. Because the meaning behind it is so powerful, so beautiful. It's an aspiration for what we're trying to achieve. So then when we're doing chanting, it's a way of aspiring for something beautiful. And the Pali language is full of these words of the Buddha, which are it's just beautiful. Beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, beautiful in the end, as the Lord Buddha said. It's just totally complete. So if we have the right attitude for our personality, it can have meaning for both. And then also we can see the danger in both. One being skeptical. Sometimes it's not that we are skeptical, we're just lazy or stubborn. And we're following some unwholesome tendency, and we haven't admitted that to ourselves. We could have some ego issue, you know. No, I know Dhamma, I know it perfectly, but really actually don't, you know. So to speak, like that. Or on the other aspect, we're faith orientated, and we should say, hang on, wait, maybe I should study a bit more, listen a bit more, and like faith usually say, oh, the Lord Buddhas are great, you've got to bow to him, do this and do that. You impose your faith. Usually the faith character imposes their faith and belief onto others. And that's what the Lord Buddha warned us about, is to show sensitivity, care, respect by using the Dhamma as a beautiful tool to show sensitive and care in dealing with all our situations. Are they answering back? All right. Anyway, so I hope that explores that. Yeah.
Do we have time for more questions?
No problem. Yeah.
All right. That question was from Florida in the USA, actually. Susara from Perth.
Is it Ajahn Susara?
Congratulations to Ajahn Katapunyo for an excellent talk. Question, according to your opinion, can consciousness exist without the senses?
I think merit. So. Yeah, yes. He's very well thorough studied monk. So yes, we've had this discussion, and this is what I said at the very beginning, is that we hardly can see this consciousness. It's without the laws, it's in our scriptures, and there's some understanding of it. And also some of the examples of great Ajahns I said, when one goes to, into Nibbana, that's something we don't know. I can't just blindly believe it. But some of the examples they give in some of these things are very unusual things going on. So it shows that they're still around, but in another dimension, so to speak. So it's very hard because we have, in the free world system, we have the lower realms, and the first stage in the lower realms, which a lot of people now are starting to believe. You can go on YouTube. I've seen some very excellent scientific proof on ghosts. There was one in Spain. They had security guys in a truck station, overnight truck station. There was a little girl wandering on the security cameras. They called the guards to go to see what's going on because they're protecting the goods because there's overnight there. It was all locked up in a compound. And they said, where is she? We can't see her. And on the security camera, they could see, she's there. They went exactly to the spot. And when they walked exactly on the spot where she was translucent. They could walk right through her. So it was really spooky. And you could see this is legit. It's just in a poor Spanish place. And so there's some interesting footages around that are now, because of, internet that comes out more often. But a lot of them you can say, oh, that looks a bit, hocus pocus, someone's played with something there. And that explains also what the Lord Buddha says in the other realms of existence, they don't have a solid form like we do. The Rupa Khandha, it doesn't exist, which is the form which is based on a coarse level of the four elements of earth, water, fire, and air. They do have it, but it's on another frequency. They are there, but on another much more refined level than what we call an energy body, or also what we call the astral body. which is also, I think, scientifically proven. When we dream, sometimes our consciousness go out, we go somewhere, we can see something and come back. So I saw that, and I was right, because we astral travelled. So it just shows that there is also the argument, the Lord Buddha didn't say, also the other interesting thing, it's a controversial point, is they translate anatta as no soul. And this is, I think, a bit, this is more trying to deliberately prod the other religions, because they say, your soul goes to heaven, soul goes to that. So we can't have soul, we can't have. But then there is, then in another sutta, where the Lord Buddha talks about is that where there's a famous close friend of Sariputta, one of the great arahants of the time, the Lord Buddha goes to help him to achieve the Brahma Viharas. He teaches him Brahma Viharas because if he didn't, his destination definitely would be in a lower realm, because he did a lot of bad things. Before he was good, but he went bad. He went really sour in his practice. And close friend, he tried to help him. And in the early stages, as he was trying to help him, he was convincing him that, that those actions, how can you say that I stole because of my family, I did evil, unwholesome, corruption in business because of this and that. How can you just justify it because of family needs when there's many livelihoods you could do? So he did some quite evil things and got involved in some stealing and killing and sort of like theft and things like that. He was quite dark, and he's saying that is not good. You can't just justify that. You can't say that. And he said a very important point. How will you explain that to the helpings when they come to drag you down to hell? Oh, it's because of this reason, or because of that reason. And what are they dragging? They're dragging his soul. So this saying that this body, once it disperses, passes away, there is still another body that exists. And maybe you're not actually wrong, the old religion saying soul, there is. But the thing that Buddhism and Lord Buddha very refutes is that the soul is internal. He refuted that because then he's talking about internalism. And he said this is a view based in tanha, whether the universe is internal, or the universe, or the soul is internal, or annihilation, which is the atheist belief. Once we die, that's it. Worms eat us, and that's it. So it doesn't matter what I do. And this is the most dangerous view, because that is where we have no basis for any reason why we act. We don't have a foundation. We don't have remorse. We don't care. This is what materialism can be very dangerous. That's why these religions, I do support Catholicism and Christianity, because at least they're trying to say there is, if you do bad, you go to hell, things like that. Lord Buddha says that as well, these things. So they do exist, but we have to see them in a proper context. So when we understand this nature of life, that nibbana is beyond that, then it's in another level of realm. It's asankata Dhamma. It's the unconditioned state. And that is the only thing we can understand it as, the unconditioned state, because we are bound by conditions. So if we still have fuel or nutriment for karmic causes, then we will either go to heaven or hell or back to human realm or so forth. And of course we won't be the same person. It's just the consciousness going and arising there, and that consciousness has imprinted with its stored memory and karmic that it's carrying on. So that's why when you have two baby children, you look at them and you say, oh, they're beautiful, they're darling, and one's crying and really always angry or upset, and the other one's very peaceful. And it says, why is that? Why are they so different? Why is it so different? It's because of karmic consequences. And they're getting the same care, and there's not much difference. Why isn't it? It just shows again that we are not like a clone, that we are carrying something with us, and our behaviour and conduct hasn't come from nowhere. Or, for example, you hear of some famous teacher such as Lumpur Dan, who's coming to come. He was a very gifted meditator. Where did that come from? And he talked that he did practice a lot in previous lives. He did. It didn't come from nowhere. It came from a lot of hard work from previous lives. So you've got to ask yourself, if my meditation's not that great this life, well, I haven't really put much effort in the past. So these things all come through causes and conditions. So to understand Nibbana is virtually impossible, but he gives us these clues and that we can understand it's the unconditioned state. And he says furthermore, a very powerful statement to all the monks in the time. He said, monks, do you know anything in this world that is permanent, everlasting, not subject to change? Please. And they didn't answer straight away. They went to their huts and they thought about it and they came back after a while and they says, we can't think of anything, Bhante. Neither can I. Neither can I, you know. Because it's saying that that's once you're beyond, once you're in another level, it's not part of that. It's that's why he used the negation, asankata, means the unconditioned state, the unborn, that which does not die, that which is not born. He's not saying it's. It sounds like he's saying internalism, it's forever, and that's how it's translated in a lot of scriptures. But that mean implying there is an ego, there is a self. But pure consciousness has no base. So how can there be an ego if there's no object? And that is very hard to understand because our knowledge of the world is based on an object. If there's no object, nothing can arise in the mind. So therefore, if a blind person says, oh, there's no colours, there's no pretty things, there's nothing to see, but then the other man says, are you a fool? There are colours, there are beautiful things. No, there isn't. They argue all day long. This is another simile the Lord Buddha says. It's like that. Because you don't know of it, you believe your point. Or another one, we have the fish and the turtle. The turtle goes out on the shore, enjoys a nice walk, and goes out into the water again and says, oh, and the fish says, where have you been? It says, oh, I went on the dry land. The land was beautiful, it was here and that. It says, no, what's it look like? Is it wet? He can only explain it in terms of water. That's all he knows. And of course, as soon as the fish tries to go out on the land, it suffocates. There's no experience of any kind of awareness of it. It's purely suffering. If you've ever been on a pier for a nice stroll and you see people catch a fish and they put it on the pier, which is ugly, and you see it just flipping all over the place in total pain and suffering, gasping for air, there's no experience of understanding of that existence on dry land. So it's very difficult to understand these Dhamma terms. But the Lord Buddha gives us some beautiful similes to reflect and continue to work with our practice so we can deepen it to attain more peace and happiness and not concerned with all these intellectual disputes. Because the Lord Buddha didn't want us, but on some occasions he did bring them out just to clarify it. So that's why the talk was about the Brahma Viharas and desire, which are very appropriate for lay people because the first one comes from Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta and the 4 Brahma Viharas, which he often prays for lay people to practice and also monks as a beautiful basis for awakening. So any other questions? Maybe just one more.
One more quick answer.
It had to be a quick answer.
Okay, all right.
Ajahn. Beverly would like to know the difference between equanimity of mind in the face of some suffering and just suppressing the emotion.
Oh, it's a difficult one. It's difficult, this is normal when we're new to the idea of equanimity, when we experience some strong emotional situation. We will naturally, like in that last clip I show as a witness, we will suppress it like he was doing there, the man of steel, holding his tears back, holding the feelings back. It's a natural response to stop pain. But the thing, as a meditator, who's very developing meditator, will then acknowledge it as an object that has arisen. That's why I played the funky music, because how difficult is it to listen to that funky music without your heart going faster, having some excitation, some stimulation? It's almost impossible. It's almost impossible. That way we can understand, if we see that response in our body and we can use it with meditative, we can accept this body, as the Lord Buddha said, we can't control it. It's causes and conditions. So seeing that funky music making us more excited, we choose to add to that. It's like we go into our library and say, oh, that's funky, or it's that track, I'm going to dance now, I'm going to do this. With our intention, we decide what to do with that aramana object. When we meet that object and we decide, wait, I'm not going to look in my library, make a decision what I want to do. I want to investigate it. When we investigate it, then we see it as it is, something that arises. And we need the peaceful mind. And this is where we access wisdom and we see what Lord Buddha asked us to do. For true wisdom is not an intellectual thing. We see it arise, it stay for a while and pass away. Witnessing that very clearly as best as we can. We can't change the effect, how it's going to rise and how it's going to affect us. We can't change that, but we can witness it. We can decide to remain neutral. And if we also will notice is the mind's inclination to hate or to grieve, we can't change that. We allow it to rise naturally, but we don't actually believe in it. Believe in it or promote it. We just know what's normal. My mother died. When my mother died, I naturally grieved for quite a while, cried and grieved. I thought it was normal, but I observed it as a normal thing. I didn't suppress it. I said, no, I've got to suppress it. That's rubbish, because I know Dhamma practice is real. It has to be real, based on slowly understanding things, and then we can let go and let go. And then I notice other family members grieving much more longer because they can't accept it as a truth of Dharma. They accept it as an attachment. And that's why Dharma is so valuable, because we're learning about what the Lord Buddha says, pointing at these truths, and we can explore them ourselves and say, I think that's true. We all have the nature to die, so why attach? And a classic example of that is in the Psycho film, where in the 80s, at the end of the Psycho film, the very famous one, not the spooky one, not the remake, the detective goes into the room and he sees him talking to his mother, and he turns around, it's a skeleton. And that's what you can see, how powerful the attachment is when he still thinks his mother's still alive, and he goes around carrying her and even dresses up as her. So we can see the harm of attachment. This is the extreme of it. So then that's why we try to allow that process of grieving, allow it to be natural, and then heal ourselves and also heal them, give them good blessings as well. So so it's more we have to develop our Dhamma practice, and this is all challenges for us. So I think it's hard.